Yeah, the textbook.
I haven't done the textbook yet. I do the discussion one day, the textbook.
Yeah. I'm not talking about this week. I'm talking in general. He gave me like 75 out of 100 because I didn't source for each answer. There are questions. So we have to.
It's not a thing small.
The method that we just put together.
Let me double check, because I got full credits.
Oh, no, we asked. He was like, oh, you guys are freshmen.
Yeah, if it's less words in the comments,
So hang on, so are you, this is still talking about the textbook work, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Let me double check, because I could have sworn.
Oh, no, I know. I'm sorry. I saw your email.
Oh,
If I get a chance, usually I'll shoot you an
short
email.
answer.
Very good.
Glad you're here.
Yeah.
What was this last week?
Questions,
Yes.
like the quizzes we're having. That as well.
I asked if I could switch into his.
How are you?
Good, how you doing? Definitely using on
It's the
this
same,
last
don't we, like, benefits?
The guy got a tackle. He got some QB hurries too.
Really?
He did pretty good. Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah, so we have this win.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah, because he didn't play for, he was injured for 3 years. He only had like an ACL.
I haven't gotten grades for freshman week.
ACL. He's sophomore in MCO.
Yeah, I did.
And he had kidney issues last year. Now he's like one of those. Not surreal,
Yeah, but you know,
No.
What were they? You appreciate
Why am I getting
the successes they have.
That's good.
Yeah, well, if necessary, it seems,
Maybe,
you know.
maybe it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can appreciate it.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Awesome. That's good.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in the business of helping people.
There's only the grades for the discussion notes. They're not grades for the.
Sorry.
She had a perfect grade on this. Come on, just bring me to it.
It's a third of your grade.
It's just a cute assignment. Just always turn it in.
Yeah.
What about
Nice. So it's always.
Thanks, guys. Y'all really helpful.
That class is more soul.
Yeah.
Typically, I would say something like that.
But this
This one's really
finance is making your way through.
I think if I go in.
I just started making notes on it.
No, I'm still there.
I saw it.
You wrote 10 pages.
You wrote 10 pages?
Dude, that's
Probably
What did you write about?
Yeah, I just wanted to at the same time,
that doesn't look right.
I started it in the first ish. I have to like put it into like case form, but they're like bullets kind of now.
And how many pages are there?
Just 2. 1.5.
Wait, this part? Future value.
Sorry. I just saw 50 on like, alright, so which is the one that you had issue with? Was that chapter 3? No, this one.
So we're up for the convention.
But she has just
So I provided
You don't have to do the equation.
I did 200. I
Well, the
assumed it was.
first part is like this kind of, and then what you can consume.
Yeah, again, 750 total. So I did about 250, maybe a little extra, change it to 60, 70. That's what I figured, right? Because, you know, I think it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
1, 2,
I'm like,
So what I did is I actually I went forward.
I started like
So what I
practicing
ended up doing is I had to go forward into the chapters because I had the digital version. So what I did is I searched up, I said solely, I figured out where I could find it anywhere.
That's gonna be very
in the chapter.
So we've had many town meetings, new CEO change.
So like, on this one,
We don't know if it's going to be true, but I'm supposed to be emailing you right now.
which health insurance policy. What do you mean by expanding Medicare?
But isn't your flight super
So I literally said as the first thing, to only say that expanding Medicare and solve health insurance policy is too vague of a question to ask.
Well, I don't know, like, this is like,
Well, because it's infuriating. Like, what kind of question is that, let alone coming from a professor? Like, it was just infuriating. And it's just like, what are you asking? So then I reframed the question and said, first of all, Medicare simply can't be used as a band-aid solve the health insurance sector, especially
The
if it's
exam.
So then what I did is I reframed the question and then I answered the question in the way that I reframed
or
it.
send her that how to write a case that you
Oh, we did.
because that was
So that's what I planned
We did.
forward, is if he gives me too vague of a question, I'm gonna say, that's too vague, I'm rewriting the question and then answering the question in the way that I rewrote it. Because I'm not gonna take, if you're gonna give me an assignment and not explain it properly. We can talk about it during the break. But yeah, that was infuriating. That was,
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, something like that.
Is it time? Everyone's so quiet. It's like, man, it's like the hush. Yeah, that's scary sometimes. You know, like when the crowd gets all quiet and then you look up and everyone's looking at you. Hey, hope you're doing good. Everybody doing all right? Welcome back. It's good to, this was a busy week in the sense that we had a case earlier in the week, and then we had the reflection still, so that kind of kept going. I hope you're managing the workloads from work, life, things you're doing, other courses and things like that. We're kind of now in the midst of the term. After another week, after next week, we'll be a third of the way through the course semester, so 33%, and so that's always kind of a benchmark I think that a lot of folks look to get to, but the newness of the term should be worn off probably by now, and everyone's probably in a good routine. I hope you find that you are. I hope you find everything going well. The other thing I hope you're doing, and have an opportunity to, and because you're forced to at this point, is you get to know some of your classmates. You get to know folks in your team, especially, but those around you. I think, you know, when you're in a challenging environment, sometimes people find grad school challenging. When you're in a challenging environment, finding others to share the workload and all that's really helpful. I know I remember my cohort of students as an MBA student, as in other degrees. I remember going through the courses as a group, and that always made it a lot easier. So, you know, reach out to your classmates and find some commonalities there. I know you will with the group, but hope we're off to a good start there. You guys have any questions before we get started? Everybody good? All right, so the good news is, or news, I guess, is that this week is a little bit of a deviation from the prior 3 weeks that we've had. We don't enter into new content or new chapter, but rather we focus on our group project, specifically stage 1. So I've sent emails, we've talked about it, or I've mentioned it several times. So this is one of those times in the term, and we'll have a few others where we more or less just kind of hit pause. We think about the things that we've worked on so far and apply those and work in group context. and go from there. So stage one of the project is what we'll primarily work on this week, starting today, and submitting it by Wednesday at midnight next week. And so we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So my goals here tonight are to talk a little bit about teamwork, not a lot, but a little bit. Again, review stage one, just talk a little bit about stage one and some ideas there that you're working on. Have about 3 minutes to 5 minutes, I don't know, it's just a quick round robin where I have an opportunity to meet with you and your group to confirm and verify that you're all on the same page for your product category and your firm, and that you are okay with what the expectations are for stage one. That'll be a pretty quick process. Because then you have the remainder of the time to do with it what you want tonight. I'll be here, so if you want to regroup and meet again, we can do that. If as a group you want to just email each other or meet together, do whatever, it's really tonight's that concept really to work as a group and to have feedback and stuff like that. I'll also say that as you guys work over the next few days, especially early in the week, next week, if you as a group want to reconnect with me, we can certainly do that. It's not a problem. I'm meeting with my online groups in Zoom meetings this next week. But Matt, hey, good. That's all right. No problem. So, but obviously, if you'll have questions and stuff, so. Feel free to use me as a resource. I'll say, like I tell every single class I have, if the deadline is Wednesday at midnight, you try to reach out to me Wednesday at like 10. It ain't gonna work real well, just in general, right? So plan your work early. You're as a group, so low stress, right? There's no reason to put a lot of stress on you. So, okay, so plan tonight should be pretty easy, pretty straightforward. A lot of time for you guys to kind of do what you want and go from there. Sound good? All right, so one of the things that we do in our professional worlds, as you may know or you will know or you can kind of get the sense, is I'm not familiar with too many work environments where you don't work with other people. And a lot of my background happens to be in marketing research, and in that professional space, everything we do is with a team. Everything. There are not research projects that are done by an individual. There just simply are not. And so one of the things that is a reoccurring theme in business curriculum and extends certainly in any MBA program is a concept of a team environment. Okay. So if you are in multiple courses where, we're going to be in another team, we're in a team again, there's kind of a reason for it. And the main reason is that working the way we work is a skill. Whether, if you work by yourself, you have to be self-managed. You have to be a self-sufficient person. You have to be able to put personal deadlines on yourself. And that's a set of skills that you develop over time. Some people are very good at that. Some others are not. But team working, it's a skill set. And some people are better at it than others. But it's a skill to develop. We don't really always, in academia and in our curriculum, we don't always do a good job teaching it or measuring it. But we expect it. It's one of those weird things that everybody has a team project, but a lot of times there's not like a grade particularly associated with it, and it's not like we measure how good you are as a teammate at the beginning of the term and measure at the end of the term to see if you made any progress. It's kind of something we assume happens. And so I say all that to emphasize that teamwork and working in groups is something you'll very likely do the rest of your life in some capacity, in some way, shape, or form. And so relying on teammates, but more importantly, managing a team, managing your role, managing expectations. Those are all skill sets that are wildly important down the road. And so anytime you have a chance to do that, I don't think it's a bad thing to do. It's kind of like public speaking, right? Does anybody like public speaking? Like getting up there in front of a crowd, just hamming it up? Some people are okay with it. How many people hate it? A few people just, yeah. Well, it's one of those things. The more you do it, the easier it gets. The more you do it, the more comfortable it is. You know, it's one of those things. So teamwork is kind of like, no, I don't want to be on another team. No, I don't want to work with a group. I just want to do my assignment, get it done, get my A in the course, move on. That doesn't develop that skill. So anyways, there are benefits and there are risks associated with working or team group things. Big benefit is if you've got an enormous project, it helps break the project up into a smaller thing. It makes it more palatable. And it also helps you address a big problem faster than if you were doing it by yourself. Obviously, we all have different skill sets. And a good team will balance complementary skills so that if somebody's good at one thing, somebody else is good at another thing, they work together and they can do like this division of labor type of concept. So that's certainly good. Pitfalls and risks, coordination breakdowns happen all the time. Look, think of it like this. You're forming a relationship with somebody else. And the strength of relationships are reliant on two things. This is always true, okay? So whether it's a individual, a personal relationship you have with somebody you like, or a relationship with a boss, or a relationship with a customer, two things drive relationships. One is how much information is conveyed between you two. How much do you talk? How much information do you share? And how deep is that information? How personal is that information? How emotional is that information? Or how complex it is? So there's two dimensions of information that drive relationship strength, those two things. And so in a group, I have one group, they're online, so it's not in this class. They've not communicated to each other at all yet. Not once. So I had to send them a real stern email today with lots of capitals and some bold, saying, you guys need, you folks, I don't think I use guys, but you people need to communicate. I mean, you will not function and your grades will not be great as a group if that happens. So communication is a pitfall. It's a challenge. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Another issue, sometimes as a groups herd together and groups think, like if you get a group of people who all have the same common interests, they all think the same. That stifles, to some degree, individualism and personality. So in other words, maybe your group is going down a path. Maybe you don't agree with that path. How comfortable do you feel saying, no, this isn't what we should do something else? It's hard. That there's an inertia, there's this idea that I'm going to go against the group, but the group's already kind of formed its view, so I'm just going to chill and not worry about this. I'm going to ride it out and not going to rock the boat. That can be counterproductive, right? What if your idea is a really good one and really going to benefit the team, and that doesn't happen because the group as a large has kind of dominated that. Bless you. Conflict, mistrust between team members. Another issue here is an idea that within a group, your group members may have different goals, different kind of ideas of what success is or what success will look like. And so if you don't have a shared goal, if you have individual goals that are potentially in conflict with each other, you're going to have strife and conflict as well. And think about, we have these issues with sales teams sometimes, with the leadership and the actual staff, and like units sold and things like that. But anyways, so risks, benefits, there are things like that. Communication, though, is absolutely important. It gets more complex with more people, right? As you can imagine, that as you add people to the mix, you could send communications out individually, but that starts multiplying if there are lots of groups or lots of people. So shared communication becomes important. I'm pretty sure, you know the way it is when you send an email, you're in a group or whatnot, you send an email and you're replying and you forget to reply to all, or you just reply to an individual and then, oh, I should have sent that to everybody. How often does that happen? I do it all the time by mistake, where I should have sent this message to everybody. One message gets sent out instead of everybody else. So the degree and the volume and the amount of information starts to grow with the more people that you have participating, and so that can be certainly a challenge. It's also a challenge, when we start miscommunicating or not communicating at all. So being clear in your messaging, being clear in what your intent is, it's always an important aspect of communication. But again, remember those two elements. If you want a deeper relationship, if it's with another business partner, like you're doing a B2B deal, a supplier or distributor, if it's a customer, more information, more frequent communication, and deeper levels of communication build relationships, period. It's just what it does. It's the way we measure relationship strength. It happens in our personal lives, it happens in our business lives, it happens in your team groups. So when I see teams struggle, they're usually not on the same page. There's usually a lot of miscommunication, like so-and-so thought this, I thought this, we're really not on the same page. Or like the group I mentioned that's online, they're not communicating at all. And we're literally starting week 4 of the term. They haven't emailed each other, they haven't accessed Teams or anything like that. So I have no expectation of a great project from them. They haven't proven it to me yet. I mean, I have no idea. We'll see what happens, right? But I've seen this play out before, and if they don't get some traction behind what they want to do, they're going to be scrambling on Tuesday next week. They're going to be throwing together ideas after they've had hard days at work. They're going to be trying to write their stuff on Wednesday. They're going to be emailing me at 10 o'clock on Wednesday evening, and we're all going to be disappointed with what happens, I think. If it plays out, I hope it doesn't, obviously. And I've been pushing it, so we'll see what it shapes out there. But so communication is big. Team structure is another thing to think about. A team is a set of people with complementary skills who are committed to a common purpose, performance goals, and approach for which they hold themselves mutually accountable. This is one of those where we get that. Well, I'm doing all the work, so I should get a better grade. I'm doing all the effort, or so-and-so really hasn't been pulling their weight. How are they going to be dinged on this? That's one of those traps that we fall into as teams, when we have different goals, we have different expectations of each other, and we don't have this mutual or shared responsibility of what the outcome is going to be. That's not the way it works. When we do a research project and we're in front of a client and we're delivering that product, that presentation, the client sees one presentation. They don't see the 30 people involved in it. They see one presentation. If it stinks, we stink. We stink equally, right? I mean, that's just the way it works. That's the way real life works. And so yeah, I mean, we need to hold each other accountable, but we also have to have shared things. So this is tricky again. Communication always comes up, but 3 things to think about. How the project is structured, how the project will become accomplished through the steps that you do. So we have stage 1, which has a deliverable, and you want to think about the components of stage 1 and what will go into that to make it look like a success, to be a successful phase, if you will. Think about what technical skills do we need to have in order to pull off this? Well, we need to know the material. We need to know kind of the scope of this. We're going to have to do some research because there's some external material we're going to have to add into this. It's gonna need to be written, so somebody with some verbal written skills will need to be involved with it too. So think about the steps, the process, what needs to happen for it to be successful, and then kind of think about who's going to do that and communicate what all of that is. And approach this for any team, right? It doesn't matter what not this class, any class or any project that you're on. It's the way it has to happen. And the earlier that you communicate that, like at the beginning of the project, the better. Because it lays out expectations, it lays out responsibilities. We define who's good at what, so they should do that. I'll tell you a little story, not to digress. In my MBA program, by that point, I really had no problem speaking in front of classes or doing whatever, right? It wasn't, it didn't bother me so much. And it does bother some people, right? I mean, it's kind of a nervous thing. And not that I was ever or am a very good public speaker, but I didn't mind doing it. So selfishly, very selfishly, me, first time we begin a group, a project, say, hey, look, I have no problem giving the presentation. You let me do the presentation. You just put it all together for me and I'll present. And be like, sure, no problem. So again, selfishly, so I just present. They'd put the project together, and as long as it looked good and I could, review it and study it, I'd do the presentation because that was my skill set. Plus, I was kind of lazy. I'm not going to admit, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I would let other people do the work if I could present it. So, yeah. None of you would do that, I'm sure. I'm kidding. It's a little levity, but it's true. All right. Different forms of structure, though, when you look at groups. We're all used to a traditional hierarchy, or we've seen at least a hierarchical approach where there's a leader organizer who sort of sees the big picture, defines the project. Again, in a work environment, this is often how this works, right? You have a team lead who is responsible for the project and what's going to happen in it. And then work is divided up somehow. The process is divided up in however it's going to be done or accomplished. There's a clear chain of authority, or at least from a leadership perspective, who's going to do what, how it's going to be done, who's going to answer to who. There are certainly risks involved with this if the leader misidentifies the project outcome or has poor leadership skills or some things like that. There are some weaknesses there. So we may be over-relying on the talents and skills of that leader, for instance. That could certainly happen. And as a result, the leader may be the one who takes the credit, may be the one, maybe rightly so, because they're the lead. They may be the one who is viewed as the owner of the project, where others don't feel that same sense of ownership. They don't feel like they're equally shared. So in this case, the leader or leaders may get the grade in the class, but everybody else might get a fraction, or they feel like they're not getting as much, they're not as responsible for the overall piece. And so that creates conflict. However, that's a common way to do it, a common way to think about it. We're probably going to shift our focus a little bit more so, or differently, to where as a group, you're going to have 3 or 4 other classmates, and you rely on each other a little bit more. It's not that one person can't be a leader personality. I absolutely guarantee that in your group you'll have at least one, probably more, people who are ready to lay this project out, walk through the process, and they'd be willing to take on more of a leadership role. I guarantee you that in your group you'll have 2 or 3 people, because you are all, by nature, you're in an MBA program, so you're all leaders. And that's who you are. That's what you do. So that's fine. But be that as it may, sharing responsibility is often a good thing as well. So there are some pros to this. More people in the group have a more equal share of ownership in the project itself, and so nothing at all at all wrong with that. Okay, so things to think about as you move forward, as we move forward through this semester, making sure that as you talk about this project, remember communication is important. Think about roles and responsibilities. Think about who has skills where and what makes sense. You can have frank conversations with your teammates. It gets awkward if you don't. It gets awkward if you wait 3 or 4 or 5 weeks or whatever, and you're just like, I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing in this group because we haven't talked. That's, it doesn't need to be like that, right? It just doesn't. So roles and responsibilities, think about who's going to be accountable for what type of work. Another thing that we don't like to do as students is monitor or critique each other. It's okay to monitor and critique each other if you're in a group. We all do it nicely. We're not being critical, even though we're critiquing. We're like, you pick up somebody else's work, say, hey, I think there are a few adjustments we might be able to make in this and might make it better. And that's not insulting. That's just, critiquing somebody else's work to make it a better piece, to make the project better. And it's like when we do peer evaluations, very, very rarely students are willing to evaluate their peers negatively. I just don't. Their feelings get hurt, or they're sensitive, or it's not in their personality. And I get that. I understand that. But I don't think it serves the group well. I don't think it serves the end purpose well. I think you have a better outcome if you are more, and again, not in a mean way, mean-spirited, but we critique each other. I write a lot of research papers, for academic research papers. It's one of my jobs, one of the things that I do. So I'll write a paper that's really long. It takes a really long time to do. It's 30 to 50 pages. It takes me a year or two to write. I'll send it off to a journal. The journal will send it off to other people to review it. And they are downright ugly on paper. I mean, you want to cry when you see the comments they make about the work you've worked on for the last year. They're brutally honest. And we have what we call a double-blind review, so we don't know who it is. And they don't know who they're commenting on. They don't know it's me, in other words. But the point is that the paper becomes infinitely better from their brutal critique because I changed the paper. And it hurts your feelings like you would never believe, but the end result is far better. And the paper gets published, and that's a good thing. So let's not hurt our feelings, but let's be okay to monitor performance. It's okay. Effective communication, have a system available. Again, whatever that works for you. If it's on Teams, if it's not, if it's just by email, if it's by phone, by a group message or whatever you're comfortable doing. Everybody has a different level of comfort in terms of how you want to communicate. As long as you're doing it often, doing it frequently, it's okay. It's all right. There was one group, and I think it was in this class, on Teams, and I just happened to be checking messages, making sure I wasn't missing anything, and they had like 60 or 70 messages to each other. It's like insane. I didn't look at them. I'm like, go for it. That's good. So that's super good. Another function here is stay focused on the task. Stay focused on the job at hand. And again, this is a class type of a thing. So you've got a goal. You want to incorporate what gets that done. We're going to talk a little bit just for a minute or two about this stage, kind of what to put into it, what you might want to put into it and stuff like that. Stay focused on that goal. Okay, last thing we'll just mention real quick. Just think about these different roles. Some of you will gravitate towards some of these. Some of you might do a little bit of each. Some of you might just this is just me, just let me be this role, and that's fine. One role in your group, and again, talk about it if you want in your group. Coordinators and organizers. Some people are just good at coordinating and organizing. They see the bigger picture. They see what the process needs to be in order to finish the project. They can see kind of how things process-wise link from step 1 to step 2 to step 2 to Wednesday at midnight when this thing gets submitted. And these are the components, and this should be the organization of it, this is how it should be structured, and this is what we need to do. Some people see that, right? And can conceptualize that mentally, and that's a good thing. So think about those skill sets, because your team needs some of that. Your team is going to need some of that. So your team is going to need some technical experts. In other words, people who know the theory, know the class material. One of the good things to do in this stage might be a product market analysis. We did that product market grid last week. That's a technical skill. That's a thing to know. And somebody in your group should know some of these technical skills and be able to construct them and use them appropriately. They also, though, need to be able to verify and agree that whatever is being put into your paper is accurate and it's true, right? So so that person may want to reread, double check the document and make sure that everything is accurate and correct technically in the piece itself. Those people are important. Those folks are necessary. Writers, speakers, communicators. Crafting message. Crafting message is a big deal. Whenever you're doing a presentation or whatnot, you want to craft a story, craft a message, but also have the, again, skills to be able to deliver that in an effective manner, whether it's in oral form or in written form. And these folks here, I am actually one of these most of the time, a lot of the time. Just tell me what to do. I'm going to roll up my sleeve and get the job done. Period. That's what I will do. Don't really care how much work it is. Just give me the work. I'll get it done. I'll get it done by the deadline that you give me, right? So obviously this person is important. This person has to be here. Now, maybe you all in your group are this person. Everybody has a little bit of this, right? Just tell me what I need to do. I'll get it done. And I'll get it done. And then whenever I get it done, my technical people can review it, double check it, make sure it's right. Maybe the technical people can tell me what I need to do. We need a product market grid. It needs to have these things in it. We need it by Tuesday. No problem. Get it done. Right? Do that and get it done. Okay, so these are some of the roles that you can think about when you think about an effective group or a team, right? A team project. And you can kind of go from there. All right, so any questions? I know we don't, this is not something that I do all the time, is really spend any time talking about team dynamics. It's not really, I wouldn't call it marketing. I'd probably call it management, but it's okay. I don't, it's called an MBA, right? It's like everything. So if this is fruitful and helpful to work on, think about as the semester goes, then that's good. All right, any questions? I want to spend a minute or two talking about this project part 1. Y'all feel pretty confident right now about what this stage 1's about? Yeah? No?
No.
No. Okay. It's okay. All right, let me do this. Let me see if this will. Move this off a little bit. Bear with me. It's sort of semi-acceptable. Okay. So the project 1, or project stage 1. Product, market. These two guys are related intricately. They work in a semiotic way. Last class, we really talked about the relationship between products and markets. We did a product market structure concept, and kind of looked at it like that. Now, in addition, very first class, we looked at exchanges and this idea of exchanges. So we had firm. This pen's not really that great. I'm going to change pens here. See if I can get something a little bit almost teal. That's not bad. Firm consumers. This pen's not doing so great either. They come together, right? First class, we kind of looked at this to form an exchange in a marketplace. That's kind of the idea of market-based economies. So firm produces products, consumers group together to form a market of consumers. Now, again, I'll say this a few times. This may be a business. A business could be a consumer, right? This could be an end user or a business. So your group may choose a product or product category where you sell it to other businesses. So when I say consumers, it could be either another business in a B2B environment or the end user or the consumer. But the consumers gather together to form a market. Firms gather together to form an industry, and they produce products that are exchanged. That should be fairly straightforward, right? In terms of what we're doing. And so, man, I'll tell you what, people in these classes, they like to use these pens. There, that's sort of better. So stage one of this project forces us to investigate this kind of dynamic where we have a product or a product category, which is which a group of firms will produce or be competitive in. And also stage one, we look in a broad sense at the market. So if you look at kind of the assignment, we want to do an evaluation of the product category from the industry perspective and from the market perspective. So if we're going to do this, think of, and again, the materials we've been covering in class support this. So think of the macro environmental trends that have been happening in your product category. Whatever your product category is, you want to investigate and think about. Now, if you look at the text, you remember your notes and think about this. Some of these are things like trends in regulations, trends in technology, trends in the economy, a broad environmental business things, right? That's what these things tend to be. Another thing that you can look at is in the industry itself. Within the industry itself, you should report things like probably its growth rate, its overall size. When we talk about size, you talk about how many firms compete in it, but you can also talk about like how many total units in this product category are sold as an industry. You could talk about the product life cycle, like what stage is this product in the product life cycle, or what stage, generally speaking, is this category in. Again, this is category level sort of analysis. That's the aggregation. Not so narrowly defined that you're looking at just one specific product, but maybe a group of products that you could think of. One of these groups is doing electronic or electric technical devices for golf, right? And that could be there could be multiple products in that group. And that's okay, right? So, because it's like a group of products that fit a product category. That's kind of the way you want to think when you're doing this type of analysis. You also want to think about competition. One of the techniques that you could use, you don't have to, might be something like Porter's 5 forces model. You're probably familiar with that. It's in the text, but it's also a pretty common model. When you think about Porter's 5 forces model, think of direct competition. You know, those would be individual companies companies or whatnot that share a lot of market share, or they fight for market share directly with each other. You have substitutes. So if I don't use this product, what do I use instead? Do something like that. And then new entrants is another category in that model. When we talk about new entrants, underlying this, what we're really talking about are barriers to entry. How hard is it for a new company to enter, or how easy is it? Some industries it's very easy for a new company to come in and be a competitor. Others it's very, very difficult. So that's really kind of the push on that particular thing. The other two things that Porter deals with, which are interesting, they're really not, they're not directly related to competitors. They indirectly are. But the idea of suppliers, also it's actually called how much power, like supplier power. But really what you want to know about is, look, in this industry, where do you get your raw materials from? And what type of raw materials are coming, and what is the structure of that? Are there a lot of suppliers of those raw materials? If you are, for instance, doing cereals, I mean, this is random, but like breakfast cereals. Most breakfast cereals are owned by one of 3 large companies: General Mills, Kellogg's, and Post. There you go. All those companies own and have very, very close relationships with their wheat and grain and corn suppliers. They either own them or they control them. It's just what they do. That's what you do in that industry. You're dealing with such large volume that you could literally own contracts of farmers for years and years and years and years, right? And that's what you do. In the beer industry, I don't know if anybody knows the beer industry, but it's not uncommon for you to own a brand, like Pabst Blue Ribbon has the brand, but they don't actually produce their own beer. Miller Coors does. Miller Coors produces Pabst Blue Ribbon. You seem to know beer.
No, you went over this in undergrad.
Yeah, I know. But it's interesting, right? That you could be in an industry, like I'm a beer brand, but I don't actually make my own beer. So in other words, each industry has idiosyncrasies and little nuances that are associated with things like suppliers. It'd be great to know in your product category if you could identify some of those. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, maybe it doesn't matter, but that might be something to think about. Think about also distributors or distribution. I probably have an extra few letters there. Or channels. That's a better way to kind of think about this. Like if you are in that industry, how do you typically get products to customers? Like what channels would most normally be or most likely be used? And is that something consistent across the industry? Be something good to know. Okay, so if you're going to use Porter's, in other words, then these are things that would help you describe the state of the product category. Does that make sense? And that's really what I want you to think about in the stage 1. Provide an overview of the state, the current state of your product category. Is it growing? Is it shrinking? How big is it? Who are the competitors? Is it highly competitive? When you talk about competition like this, there's all of these, like, is it an oligopoly? Is it, pure competition? Those types of things. It's probably not going to be a monopoly. That would be probably silly, but those are things that you would think about as well. Maybe. Those are all things that wouldn't hurt, that could add to the context if you wanted to. Trends, like is it moving in a direction that is AI being pushed by AI, or is it being pushed by new consumer interests or things like that? All right, so it's a snapshot, right, of the industry, of the kind of place they're in. And again, remember, this is at your product category level. That's why I'm really pushing your groups to really think about your product categories. Not making them too broad, but also not making them too narrow, okay? It has to be a nice space that you can do it. You can probably get industry level reports through Googling and through databases and stuff like that. I'm sure there are product category level or industry level reports out there that are available. Shouldn't be a problem to kind of cull that all together. Does that help? Does it help a little bit so far? Seem reasonable? Okay, all right. Okay, so part 2 is maybe a little bit kind of similar, except that part 2 of this is we're looking at consumers, and where I want you to really focus or be okay doing is thinking of the generic consumer. In other words, the consumer of the product category, right? So whatever that, if it's the electric devices in the golf space, then it's going to be generically golfers or people who are outdoors or people who use those types of products. You think a little bit dynamically too. Don't feel like you have to be myopic. I don't see any reason why a golf rangefinder might not be used by a birder, somebody who's looking at birds and they want to know how far away the bird is. Or some other application, right? I mean, that just because the products are for one purpose doesn't mean the consumer may not be using them for multiple purposes. So sometimes one of the things we want to do here is when we look at these consumers, think of again, from a generic perspective, their general characteristics and behaviors, and maybe trends in these. Are these consumers growing again? Are they changing their interests? Are there influences that would make this consumer different today than that same consumer 20 years ago? Are they getting older? Are they getting younger? Are they getting more technologically savage? Are they looking for more features? Are they migrating from one technology to another technology? Kind of think about the evolution and the trends that are affecting the consumers from a market base. Remember, these consumers, this is going to be really important. They're going to have specific needs they're trying to satisfy and wants. Presumably, their needs and wants are the same. I mean, if I'm using the rangefinder device as a golfer, well, there's a specific purpose I'm using it for. But what if I need to find the distance between myself and how far I am to the shore and I'm on a boat? I don't know if I could use that same device, but maybe I would. So that's a very different need or want, but I might be using the same device to do it. Does that make sense? So, kind of think, again, be creative. Think about the consumers and how they're using these products. It might take some time and effort and things like that. But when you're doing these, how people use the products and why they use the products. So this is kind of like a how question, and this is a why question. The different types of, the different ways people, kind of use these or why they use them will suggest different market segments, different groups of consumers. So you may have a group of consumers who use the product for one reason. You may have a group of consumers who use the product for another reason. I would suggest that we have two different market segments. Okay, or I use it during the day, or somebody else uses it at night. People go to fast food restaurants, people go to Starbucks or fast food restaurants. Some go through the drive-through and some walk in, order, and sit down. Those are two different behaviors. So you have a market segment of people who grab and go, and you have a market segment of people who stop and stay. They order different things on the menu. They spend different amounts of money with you. They're using your product for two different reasons. Two different market segments, clearly, right? They're buying the same products, but they're doing it for different reasons. So you should be able to think about consumers in this product space and kind of how and why they use the products. And you're going to want to identify, if you can, some market segments. And they should be natural. These should be kind of a natural things that happen. You may also be able to do a sort of a market structure tree, like we looked at last week, where you have the generic market, and then you have some different things. Oh, your product category is here, and then you have some variations, and you have different consumers or different things there, and these might be your different market segments, something like that, depending on how you visualize it. You could do something like that as well. But the point here is, of stage one, is to tackle this product category space. Think about it from, we've got this the firm product industry side. We have the market generic, the market consumer kind of purchase side. The buyer and the seller come together, and that's how we look at it. Okay, let's two parts. What questions do you have? Yeah.
So is the left part of the board for the stage one of the project, and the right?
It's all stage one.
It's all stage one.
It's all stage one. Yep. So that's a good question. I did. We'll just see if we can pull this up. See if this works. Pull this up real quick. If I can get this. This does too many. Well, that doesn't really work. I'm awful with these. Always happen. All right, whatever. And if you read the description in the assignment, stage one, I separated it because it's in one paragraph. This is the same language, the same stuff, but the first talks about the situation analysis, environmental scan, the macro environment of what we're going to do, the state of the industry. I gave an example, 5 forces, but there are other models too. 5 forces is just one. It's just some people use it, some people love it, and it's mentioned in our text. So I just wanted to affirm that a little bit. So the second part of the same stage is think of the market. What makes up the generic market? The consumer. What are their general characteristics? Define broader segments that make up the market. Think about those. A little bit more kind of who they are, why they're buying, and some stuff like that. It's helpful to do this now for a few reasons. One is when you do the competitive analysis, you should see who's in the industry, and you've chosen a company, but maybe you change your company. Maybe you choose one of these competitors right after you do that. I mean, we haven't done anything at the company level yet, right? Even though you've chosen a firm, you could come back and say, well, look, there are all these competitors out there. This gives me a more informed view of the competitive space. And so you may choose a company from there if you don't love the one that you have. Second, it gives you a better understanding of the markets and the market segments. There's no possible way you could ever come up with a product now. You have no idea what the market is. You have no idea who makes up the market. You haven't done the research to know. You just haven't. I mean, we could come up with lots of great products, ideas, but it'd be like literally closing your eyes and going fishing and hoping something bites. I mean, it's just, you'd have no idea what is out there. And to a little bit of an extent, maybe you know the company that you want to focus on, and that's good. But then again, maybe there are others that you need to know more about you'd like to do. So that's why stage one, it really kind of is the outside looking in. Now, stage two requires that you do take the company that you've chosen. We do an internal analysis of the company that you've chosen. So in a few weeks, in 3 or 4 weeks, you do an internal evaluation of the firm that you're choosing, that you've chosen. We look at their strengths, we look at their resources, we look at what they're good at, what they could be good at, what their technical abilities are. We look at their brand elements. We look at them, and then we look at their product portfolio, right? Like right now, if you don't know what your company's product portfolio looks like, how on earth could you possibly suggest a new product for them? You wouldn't know how it fit. You wouldn't know if it would be complementary. It'd be like, again, shooting in the dark. You just wouldn't know. So it's like one of these deals where this is a semester-long thing, and this is the first step, right? So we spend a whole week doing it. It's okay, right? There's no reading this week. Just work on your group dynamics, work on your team, get to know each other, go to a coffee shop and buy each other coffee, whatever. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do, but go from there. So great question. Other questions?
How do you want this to be formatted? Like this stage to, like, what do you want it to look like?
Yeah, so I find for myself, if it's organized in some type of an outline where you start with maybe, in this case, just what it looks like with the industry. And if you want to use some type of organization where, if you wanted to use some type of a Porter's thing or some type of thing where like this macro environmental trend analysis, in the textbook, there's 5 or 6 large trend areas identified. You can just take each one, paragraph for each one, just kind of organize it that way. Use some headers if you want and subheaders just to organize the stuff. In fact, I would encourage anybody just to go ahead and make a skeleton of what your project's going to, or what this is going to look like. Just organize it from that point and then fill in, and just that way it'll flow, it'll be organized. I can read it. I don't have to be jumbling around looking for stuff. Feel free to use multiple paragraphs. Like a whole page should not be a full paragraph. It's easier to read if it's organized. So I would say do a section on the industry, and then do a section on the market. Those 2 sections are probably not going to overlap much. So it's, in other words, you don't need to kind of mix and match, and I'll just do boom, boom. References. Feel free to use lots of references, cite in the text, and then use a reference page after. Charts and graphs, perfectly fine, as long as they make sense, right? And they need to be formatted in such a way that they look like they're in your paper. They're not, and reference them. Does that help? Okay, all right, good.
What reference style?
Oh, whichever floats your boat. I don't care. Harvard, APA, Chicago, as long as it's consistent. And when I say insight references, in-text references, you say Apple increased share by 20% in 1999, then right there you should indicate where you found that, like Forbes 2024 is the reference, and then on the reference sheet you have Forbes 2024 in full reference. Does that make sense? Is everybody okay with that for the most part? Please let me know if you have any questions like that, though. But in terms of the style, doesn't matter to me. And funny fact, when I do like my stuff for research papers, for nearly every journal out there, journal marketing, any of those, they all have different standards. So I'm always changing mine. There was another question, I think, maybe.
At this stage, Professor, we don't need to have a company that we're gonna use right now. We're gonna point out the industry as a broad concept, and then we're gonna point out the players of that industry, right?
So,
And then we don't have to choose nothing for now.
right, I like to have
Choose a company.
I like to have folks, I like to have teams identify a company earlier. However, you don't have to write this from the perspective of that company. So in other words, your company could be in the mix just like all the other companies. It's not like you are a physical officer for that company and you're reviewing the rest of the industry. I would include them in your review. It doesn't have to be written in the perspective though of that company, if that makes sense. And again, I really want each group to know or have a feel for what company you want to use. But if that changes based on things you learn from this exercise, that's okay.
Yeah, probably we're gonna have a better view at the end.
Right.
Of what company we're gonna choose, but you want us to put on the stage one, we're gonna move forward. Now, on this one, we wanna have this idea from us at this stage, that which one we're gonna choose.
By the end of the week, by the end of whenever you turn it in, I think you'll probably have a good idea of who you want to have. And you have an idea already, right? Most of your groups have ideas already. This might just be an affirmation of that. It just might confirm that, yeah, that's the company we want to do. Or you might think otherwise, which would be fine too. I think most groups stay with the company that they initially choose. But I just want to leave that caveat out there that if you do this exercise and you're like, oh, that company doesn't make any sense. There are all these other cool companies out there. I want you to at least have that option to think that way. Yeah, great question. What else? All right, look, so what we'll do, I'm going to shut this down, and if it's okay, just grab 3 or 4 minutes maybe with each group quickly. It's like a quick round robin. It's one of those where if I spend too much time with groups 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, the other groups are waiting this whole time and they're ready to go or whatever. So I don't want that to be just real quick. And then once, you guys, once we meet real quick, if you want to stick around, stay. If you want to talk, that's great. It's really, this is your night, okay, for stage number 1. Okay, sound good? All right, let me do this.